hot topic event of the season. And really, Professor Borick needs no real formal introduction to our membership. For years, we have depended on him to give us an honest evaluation of what is going on in politics and trends in campaigns and election processes. We have thoroughly enjoyed his presentations that help us to be aware of the reality based on research and the work he has done as director of the Muhlenberg College Institute of Public Opinion. We know his views are very well respected, as he has been asked to share them in every form of media, from print to TV major markets. Last year, I think if you remember, we enjoyed a presentation by Chris on climate change and public policy, which we didn't realize was one of his expert areas of research. And it was very valuable because I think it helped us to understand that as an organization, we should especially formulate our policies and advocacy based on present day facts and research. We are, just as a reminder, and this is something I want to explain to everyone, we are a nonpartisan entity. However, based on our mission to empower voters and defend democracy, we are not non-political. What that means is that when we see things that violate our mission, regardless of which party, we are to call them out and to help bring that information to the voters. Anytime we see anything that limits voting or attacks the sanctity of our democracy, we will react in a political manner. We can learn from Professor Borick, especially this year, that when we pick things to advocate for, when we pick things to support, that we really should base it on the variable research as we go forward. And there's a lot of research out there right now based on what is happening both in Washington and across 49 of the 50 states where legislation has been introduced to limit access to voting. So with no pressure at all, Chris, we welcome you, and we're leaving the topic open to you, what you want to discuss, what you think we should know, and what's going on out there in that political world. So without further ado, Chris Borick.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary, and Happy New Year to everyone. Good to see lots of faces of friends. I'm glad to see you're at least looking well on Zoom. I hope these challenging times continue to be good to you and your families, and that you continue to do all your great work that you do at the League. And so, Terry, am I available to share a screen today? Is that, I didn't check with you beforehand.
I will set that up right now.
Excellent. I didn't check previously. I'm sorry to do that. It was I'm going to show some slides. So
okay, you should be able to share now.
Awesome. So yes, I was originally going to talk back in, I think, December, but we had some family plans that I screwed up our schedule with. So I thank you for being flexible. And as part of my thanks, I want to give you a preview of a survey we're going to release tomorrow. So you will be the first people to see this publicly today, as a bit of thanks for dealing with my scheduling incompetence with it. And it's very much in line with the mission and the work that you do. And so I'm going to now share my screen. Let's see, everybody can see that? Excellent. Let me just do the slideshow from start. There we go. Very, very good. So as I mentioned, we are, everybody knows we're headed into a gigantic election year, and you're at the epicenter of it here in Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley, with so many of the contemporary issues, challenges, controversies of American politics playing out. And so we're going to be polling a ton this year. We do a lot of our normal electoral work, on electoral politics campaigns. And so we'll be doing that. But as we have been committed to for a long time, we're very interested in process-related matters, and how the public views those process-related matters, and how they might be changing. And with that in mind, I'm going to give you a sneak preview today of a poll that will be released tomorrow. We're doing this in conjunction with a group down in Washington called Keep Our Republic. I've worked with them a little bit before. They're a group, a nonprofit civic education group nonpartisan, that's been interested in, like a lot of groups, in electoral processes and keeping those processes strong and fair. And so I worked with them this year on putting together a survey in Pennsylvania that looks at voter views on a number of integrity process matters. We conducted it just last month, 506 Pennsylvanians that voted in the 2020 election, standard probability-based sampling. And many of these questions we asked just a year ago. So we wanted to update one of our own surveys at the Institute of Public Opinion we did right after the 2020 election, looking at how Pennsylvanians thought about the race, the election, its accuracy, issues that might be concerned with it. So a lot of the things we did this time around were updating the exact same questions to see what, if any, changes had occurred over the last year in the Commonwealth in terms of public opinion. So with that, I'm going to give you some of the findings, take you through some of them, and then open it up for questions and discussions, and on this, and of course, any other questions you have, which is why. So we started off with some confidence in the 2020 election questions last year. And these are all people that voted in that election. And these are questions we asked just last December, and now I've asked them again this December, December 21, and then compare it to what we saw in 2020. And you can see we framed a number of questions. Like, for example, the first question there, that was number 5 in our survey, that the final results of the election, speaking of the 2020 election, accurately reflected how Pennsylvanians voted. And you can see that in terms of confidence, a majority of Pennsylvanians, the numbers in the parentheses are from 2020. The numbers on top are from 2021. So the most recent numbers are the ones on top. The ones in parentheses are a year before. And you can see on that question of confidence in the results of the 2020 election, a majority of Pennsylvanians, 55%, are either very or somewhat confident. That's slightly down last fall or last December when we did this. It was 57%. So relatively the same margin of error. The one notable thing is the intensity. The very confident number decreased from 49 to 35%, a trend that we saw in a lot of the numbers over the last year, decreasing, intensity at both ends of the spectrum. Ironically, perhaps, or not ironically, or at least notably. And you can see that even at the other end. So last December, when we asked this question, 34% of people that voted in the election said they weren't confident at all. That number had dropped slightly down to 28%. But what we saw was an increase in the percent that said not too confident, rising from 6 to 15. So a little bit of a net gain in that metric. I think the big takeaway picture is most people are confident in the result, a majority, but a very slim majority as we look at it, not an overwhelming majority by any sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Could you hold for 1 second, folks? I have a dog that's anxious to go out. You must all know this. This is part of the Zoom world right now. So I'll be right back. All right, dog, come on. Sorry about that. That's joys of Zoom and an old dog. So I'll have to reprise that in a second. But you can see some of the other questions that we asked kind of get at the same thing, that the elections were conducted in a fair way. 6 out of 10 Pennsylvanians agree with that, but you have a quarter that said they're not confident at all that took place, down slightly from last year, as we talked about the intensity, but again, a pretty significant level. We see that a majority think that Joe Biden received the most votes, but 3 out of 10 are not confident at all that he did last year. That's almost identical to where it was a year ago. Not a lot of change, and in the big picture, there's not. And then that big question, was there widespread voting fraud in 2020? There's a majority say they're not confident that there was widespread voting fraud. You can see 54%, but the amount that were not confident at all was 50% last year, down to 38%. while about 3 in 10 again said they're very confident there was. That's almost identical to last year. So not dramatic changes over the last year. And on the big picture, as we look at it, some really stark divides, right, in terms of how the 2020 election is perceived a year later on all these dimensions. So we ask a number of, go on to ask questions on trust with institutions. So we framed it this way, trusted with officials and institutions in Pennsylvania regarding their role in providing safe, secure, accurate elections. And we saw this, as you could see on the screen, that in terms of strong trust, even if we put in somewhat trust, there is significant, I guess, a deficit, if you will, in trust in lots of institutions, but not all. County elected officials, at the county level, are the most trusted according to this metric that we posed with 67%, 2 out of 3, either strongly or somewhat trusting these individuals. The Supreme Court was second at 57% in terms of strong and somewhat trust, while the executive and legislative branches lagged behind. Obviously Governor Wolf, we could identify as an individual right now. And so a lot of this reaction is not just to the institution, but the individual. And he's got 45% trust level. Well, as you can see on the other side, he's got 50% that either somewhat or strongly distrust, with a third strongly distrusting. The state legislature, well, there's a bigger group, 11%, that aren't sure than the governor, is fairly divided in the public's views of it, right? In terms of strong distrust, it's 40%. In terms of trust, it's 49%. So a lot of these divisions that we saw earlier permeate our views on institutions. And we hadn't asked these questions before, so I didn't have any previous data, but it could tell you, right? If you look at where trust is highest, it's at the local level and not in Harrisburg. Not shockingly, I won't have time to go through all this today. You'll be able to see it in the full report when we release tomorrow. The divides on this are incredible across partisan groups, right? Republicans and Democrats viewing it very differently across. One notable thing, though, I will say, even though I'm not showing in the findings, you can see this in the full report. Republicans distrust, people registered Republicans in Pennsylvania distrust all institutions more than Democrats. All, even the state legislature, which is Republican controlled. Their distrust right now, and this is not uncommon in politics. When you lose an election like 2020, you kind of blanket, but it's part of a broader phenomena that's out there, and I just wanted to call attention. We looked at particular ballot systems, and trust, confidence in different types of voting mechanisms: paper ballots, electronic, mail ballots. We also threw in internet voting just to see. Obviously, it's not used in Pennsylvania, but we wanted to benchmark it and kind of get a sense comparatively where it might stand. And you can see the paper ballots, electronic systems are viewed at the highest level of confidence. Although I will note again, it's not on the screen, when we asked Republicans versus Democrats on this matter, even though most Republicans used electronic voting systems or paper systems last time, they trust them less than Democrats, even though most Democrats, more Democrats used mail ballots last time around. So that trust is really, it goes across these. But the mail ballot issue has become, this, everybody in this group knows, incredibly divided in the state. You could see that in these results. 50% said they're very or somewhat confident, while 50% said they're not too confident or not confident at all. It doesn't get more divided in the state on an issue. And that's really become, over this last year, as the issues become focused on, a major point of contention. All right, I'll take my 2 seconds to let the dog back in while you look at these numbers, and I'll be back for more results. There you go. Boy. All right. dog business over. Back to work. Okay, so you can see this. Finally, we asked, and I think these are really interesting questions, and there's so much here, and I apologize for the busyness on the screen, but maybe I could walk us through a little of it. So we ask a whole bunch of questions, where we ask statements. We do this regularly, where we say, hey, here's a statement. Do you strongly agree with the statement? Somewhat agree, all the way down to strongly disagree. We ask a bunch of questions. Some of them we asked last year. Some of them are new. And you could see, what sort of array of subject matters. For example, we wanted to measure where Pennsylvanians were, a year after the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. And we wanted to see, do people actually think of it as an insurrection? And you could see there's some division on this topic. Most Pennsylvanians do agree that it was an insurrection against the U.S. government, but a strong minority of voters, including a quarter, disagree with that, strongly disagree with that notion. This is, once again, as you would guess, very much partisan divide. A majority of Republicans do not think of it as an insurrection. Republican voters that voted in 2020 don't think of what happened on the 6th. That doesn't mean they approve of it. It just means that they can't categorize it under that term, which I think is interesting on its own. That mail ballot question, a question that's been permeating Harrisburg and discussions and things you're very invested in. You can see that, like in some other questions, the intensity of this slightly modified over the year, with those strongly agreeing and disagreeing getting a little bit smaller. But on the whole, if you look at it last fall or last December when we did this, 47% of people agreed that it should be limited. That has slightly increased to 52% in our last poll, a majority of Pennsylvanians. So just like on other mail ballot questions, very divided, right, on the topic, but a slight movement. And again, I don't want to make a lot of that because it's margin of error, in the polls, but certainly the division remains really, really stark and maybe a little bit nudging in the direction of opposition or support for limiting mail ballots in the state. You could see, we had some different frames about the legislator attempting to make it safer or more secure, or to actually make it harder for those, and some of those same divisions, right, are present that we see in perceptions. The one area that there was one of the rare places where we saw really strong, not complete, but pretty powerful. About 2/3 of Pennsylvanians do not think the Pennsylvania legislature should be able to overturn the results of an election after they've been certified by state and local officials. So there's this, belief, I think, again, getting 2/3 of Pennsylvania voters to agree on anything these days is pretty hard. They do agree on that subject matter. And that last question, the one about, legitimate ballots not being counted, is pretty, you get a pretty strong percent of Pennsylvanians that believe that's, as big of a case as it is, any type of fraud. So the big pictures, and I hope, let's see. Oh, good, right. It's about 20 minutes is what I wanted to do, is I think the big pictures, and I'll stop the share right now, is that we, a year plus from the 2020 elections, Pennsylvanians are really divided on a number of key electoral process matters, ones that you've been engaged in and thinking about. The partisan divides that are so prominent in American politics play out through all these things. You'll be able to look at the full report and you'll see it time after time after time. That Republican distrust in everything right now, including institutions that are Republican controlled, including processes used by Republicans, is striking to me. That paucity of trust among, one major group of the electorate right now is notable. And so we head into a year with some of the biggest elections nationally and statewide, of course, right here in the Commonwealth. against the backdrop of fairly divided public views on the nature of our electoral processes, which is a challenge for us all as we move into this year. So with that, that's my introduction of some new results for you, and I'll be happy to entertain questions, comments, thoughts from the group. I don't know. I guess Mary, is should I just call on folks, or?
I think Terry had asked that we use
Terry.
the
Okay.
hand.
Oh yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So, Terry,
That was very, very interesting. I didn't really see too many surprises. Like I said, it was very interesting. The thing I wonder about is when the legislature passed Act 77, which enabled mail-in ballots, it was almost unanimous with Democrats and Republicans. I wonder what those numbers would have looked like before Trump, during his campaign, had blasted the fraudulency of mail ballots.
it'd be dramatically different. There's no doubt about it. We polled in early 2020, this even before the pandemic. We asked voters in Pennsylvania what they thought the biggest threats were to electoral processes in the state. And we used voter fraud, voter suppression, voting machine malfunctions, right? An issue that was being talked about. So we gave a variety of issues, and fraud was really low. It was really low on the concern level for Republicans. In fact, it was just about as high as Democrats had it. So it evolved, absolutely. And I'm a political scientist. What changes these things? Well, we call them elite cues in the world of politics, cues from leaders, celebrities, others that shift our views. And we kept asking that question during 2020. And I even have it on this poll, a similar question. I didn't include it today. And it became bigger and bigger and bigger of an issue, almost exclusively for Republicans. And so that's
interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't evolve, Mary, and folks out of thin air. It's developed over time and nurtured, and that's where we are right now. It's an issue that Republicans deeply believe is a concern, and their trust levels indicate that.
Yeah, no, just another short question or observation. A lot of us do our banking online, even on our phone. Do you see a day where possibly we will be voting by internet?
Well, I used to think that it would probably, come in America, but I think that belief that I had was part of a different era. We are in such a place right now in terms of distrust in so many things in our electoral process, that if we layered in, online voting, despite the ubiquitous nature of how we do everything in our lives, and including what we're doing right now, I can't see it in the near future. Will there be a time? Certainly, I think eventually, but we're farther away from there than we were maybe a few years ago.
Probably won't happen until there's a 100% positive, secure way not to hack, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'm not a technical wizard, but that might be pretty far away too. So,
Yeah,
so we'll see. Well, good. I see Donna has her hand up. Oh, there you go, Donna. Could you unmute?
Sorry.
That's all right. We're a little tricky with our Zoom.
I have all these things. I was just wondering about the who these respondents to your survey are, like, and how you went about gathering your research.
Yeah, these are people that voted. We use voter files to locate, if we're doing a registered voter file survey, or people that actually voted, or super voters, whoever we're looking at. Voter files, as you very well know, give you lots and lots of information about voters, when they voted, how often they voted, contact information. So what we do is we reach out, we select our sample randomly through voter files, We supplement them with there's a bunch of vendors and providers that update information, phone numbers, all kinds of things for them because the voter files can get out of date. So we pay for that, and then we reach out to individuals that are chosen randomly, mostly cell phones now. I think in this poll, 75-80% cell phone. As it's increased over time. You know, it's a little in a general population. We do like a survey that's not just politics. It might be 90% that we do cell. Now, voters being a little bit older and some not having cell phones, especially older voters, we still have some landlines as part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's interesting.
Other questions that you have? I think I see Borick. Is that or Pat maybe? Oh, who's that? Pat.
Pat, you're on mute.
That. Okay,
Here
good.
you go.
I'm just wondering how many people do you have to contact to get your 500? Do you get a lot of refusals?
Oh, yeah, it lots and lots. It takes a bunch of time. For example, for a project like this, yeah, I can go run the data. I didn't look specifically, but I know from last year's numbers, we probably have to reach out to 10 times that amount to get folks. Very time consuming, costly to do field research right now. So it is laborious and costly, and we're exploring. I think I've talked to you folks before in the past about this. We're probably in the next few years looking for some alternative methods that allow us to still have everybody has a chance to be called, but maybe is more efficient. Some online panels that have mixed methodologies. So we're well into that world, but the bottom line is it's a lot of effort to get someone to participate.
Much more than it used to be.
Oh my Lord. You look back in life, folks, so you think about, you don't realize how easy you had it at certain times. And in the public opinion world, as a researcher, when I started, you could tell, by my gray, I've been around a long time doing this over a quarter of a century. In the 90s, we'd get, 1 out of 3 people to participate in these, and we still am happy. Folks do still, when they see it's from the college calling, we get it at fairly good rate compared to some other folks, but it was so much easier, so much more cost effective in the past. So you look back glowingly in the past at how things might have been, but they certainly are different. Let's see who I got. Anne, how are you?
Okay. I've got a question for you as a political scientist more than as a pollster. Have you detected any movement along the lines of the issue of the counties being allowed to open the mailed-in ballots before Election Day?
Oh, it's such a good question. And we didn't poll that. It's one of those questions we probably should, or maybe should do this year. That's really great. Great question. But we didn't. So it's one of those things that I think, and this is more based on my own evaluation rather than empirical data, that you would get pretty strong buy-in for, even among at least a core of Republicans, right? That the idea that the waiting on these things has limited value. I think, I guess there's the fear of it being released or some data that might shape public views if they had an idea of where the early voting was. I see that as a trivial concern compared to the damage that is done, I believe, by having extended periods of counting, right? It plays into the distrust. It plays into the public perception that, hey, what's going on there? And of course, it's absolutely explainable why it takes so long if you can't start counting to, at least till midnight on Election Day or what, the time frame. So the outcome is perfectly predictable. And it would seem like, at least in my world, a pretty low-hanging fruit to address in terms of trying to get this this done. You know, I think we saw some counties get much better at this and find ways to process quicker over time, but there's only so much you can do in terms of efficiency to make this happen. And the longer it drags on, the less positive I think it is for public perceptions of elections. So I don't have any polling data on that or where the public stands, but from a broader perspective, I think it would be a positive move for an election perception and integrity. And it doesn't seem to be one that would cost a lot to make the change.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ann. Let's see, I'm looking around the room. I see Kathy next on my screen.
Yeah, hi. Well, you kind of answered one of my questions was about you do identify who you're calling from, because I get so many people calling for polls and I have no idea what to do with them. But my other point was, so the Republicans, not to be, whatever, are the ones that tend to object to voting by mail. In fact, a couple of my neighbors said, I'm going to the polls so that I know that my vote is there or whatever. And, that can go either way, really. But how do we convince those who are objecting to the mail-in voting that it's really good? I mean, we had Phil Armstrong on the meeting and he went through all the details of how it was effective and safe, but there's still people out there that don't trust it. How do we do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kathy. And I think Mary asked before about, how mail balloting became this lightning rod, right? In a relatively short period of time. A little over 2 years ago, it was passed with overwhelming, bipartisan support. So it's evolved fairly quickly in this, and that's largely the product of lots of efforts on the part of certain political figures to make that the case. And it's really expanded. And, it starts with the former president's kind of advocating that this was the case, and then it expanded out. So how do you convince, so someone like people that, a Democratic commissioner like Phil Armstrong or executive can speak to the process and make a case for it. But in our world right now, that's going to be his impact limited to largely Democrats, right? And independents. His vouching for it won't have much of an effect, we know, on those that might have different partisan and ideological beliefs. So where do you fix that? You need voices from individuals that have been engaged in this process and can vouch for them on the Republican side to speak up and to say it. And you saw that, a lot of folks that, that were involved in the process that were Republicans vouching for the accuracy, the integrity of these types of electoral processes. But there were minority voices within their realm and being outnumbered, and in many ways the volume of others was much higher. So I think you need those voices, and this is part of American politics, Pennsylvania politics right now. You got to have some broader consensus on process that take individuals to step up and go against popular perceptions within their base to explain these aspects and to make the case and to build trust, right? To build trust in the systems. That's much easier, Kathy, said than done. Like so many things in life, once it's created and let out, it takes on a life of its own, and it's harder to counter it than it is to build it. And this is one of those cases I think was so important, and the work to keep going. Barbara.
And maybe you've already answered this, but when you do this polling process, do you ask people to self-identify as Republicans, Democrats, independents? And is there a reluctance to do that? And also, as polling has happened, do you find people seem to be more set in their responses and their answers, depending on what party they belong to?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do ask, right? We do. You could do it two ways. You could it's on your voting record, right? You are registered right now as like I'm registered as an independent. People could be registered, you know, an independent, Republican, Democrat, other party. So you could see it on the voting record, but we verify during the call. We ask, how do you identify? And sometimes there's a difference, right? People might be registered for a long time as a Democrat or Republican, but now they identify differently. So it's the way you ask the question too. What are you currently registered as? Because you'll see some difference there over time, but you can kind of get an appraisal of where people stand on their issues. And that's one issue. We don't get a lot of people that say they won't answer compared to other things. Yes, you could bet we ask demographic questions. People are very reluctant to share demographic, especially anything socioeconomic, right? To do that, even if it's big, broad categories you're trying to go after. So you have to be kind of attentive and creative to that. But as you kind of alluded to, the surprise right now, or the differences, that it's not shocking to me when I run the breakouts of the results, how different Republicans and Democrats view things right now. And I saw some of you say, or you weren't that surprised with the findings that we mentioned today. And in many ways, I'm not. Sometimes the level is what surprises me, right? How strong it may be or how different it may be. But in today's world, on so many, Mary said I talked about climate change, or I do a lot of my research last year to this group. And you ask me to explain people's views on climate change. Well, I'd say, well, what's their party? Before I would need to know their education level. Not that other things don't matter or where they live and things. It's just we're really in a place where partisanship dominates so much of our perception. It was a great question. Let's see. I think I'm going to stay with Barbara's right now. I'm on a run. Hey, Barbara. W. I got you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Am I still muted? Okay, follow up to the question that the other Barbara asked. I was wondering, in the study that you showed us, what the breakdown was according to party of those that participated.
Yeah. So what this was, we have to do a little bit of weighting, right? So we always think about the population you're trying to make inferences about. And for this, we wanted to keep it consistent with last December's survey. So last December survey was of voters that voted in the 2020 presidential election, which is, most of the voters in the state did. There's certainly groups that weren't. So what we had to target for was, what was the makeup of the electorate in 2020, right? It would be different if we were looking for likely voters in 2022 or registered voters. They're different populations. So this one's very particular to people that voted in 2020 in Pennsylvania. As you can guess, we had record turnout. It's a big, it's a big group. So the final breakdown has to not necessarily look like how all registered voters are in the state, but how people voted, which means the balance, there's a gap. There's, about a 6% Democratic advantage right now in registered voters in the state. When we looked at the 2020 who actually showed out, that balance was much lower. Republicans turned out at higher levels relative to Democrats. So it was a slight, I think maybe a 2-point Democratic advantage in the overall population. So it was almost even Democrats and Republicans, because that's what the final 2020 election makeup was. So again, and so we have to wait a little bit. We wait, statistical weighting is to try and make the sample, which is anytime you take a small group, there's going to be some error compared to the general population on gender, on race, on party affiliation. On this one, we could actually wait to the final election results too, right? What we know, Joe Biden won by 1.2%. So we could weight we asked people who they voted for back to that too, to try and mirror the electorate as close as possible.
Interesting.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're welcome. I think I see Mary.
Yeah, back again. I have a question for you. As a league, we're constantly looking at the younger generation, as far as getting members, getting them involved in some of these political advocacy programs. you're in a field where you have your thumb on the pulse of the youth. If you were to administer this poll to them, what's your gut feeling about how are younger citizens feeling right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I spend my life around 18 to 22-year-olds. So I get a little sense of where they're at. And, we could break, our surveys, we have broken up at age levels. They're a little bigger than 18 to 22, like it's an 18 to 30-year-old group. So
Right.
it's not quite, a little bit of apples to oranges. They're a group right now that, I think are much, issues like voter suppression, for example, we see are much higher as a concern among that group than voter fraud. That doesn't mean there's no concern with that issue, but kind of voting access, voting rights issues are more salient and I think bigger concerns in an area that they're interested in. I see that among my students and in some bipartisan efforts at the college level. I work with our college Republicans and college Democrats. There's another group called Berg Votes that's nonpartisan and engaged. Actually, a great group. It'd be fun for you folks to talk to them over the years. They're engaged in just getting people to vote and to talk about process issues. And they were very proud last year. Muhlenberg had one of the highest, voting rates in the country for college students on campus, and they did a lot of work to make that happen. And so voting access for rights issues are key to them. Policy issues are key, and not surprising. An issue like climate change resonates very much, and that might be a little bit of who I work with in selective things, but I think across the population, equity issues are big concerns. So that's why I think kind of the overlay, the confluence of equity and voting rights really is something that they're well concerned about. And I've seen this again with people that are in our college Republican group, that they're worried about access issues.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Where are some of your students? Where do they want to head after college?
That's other good questions. Everywhere, as you can guess. I teach, again, selective. So I teach political science, public health, environmental issues, election things. So I might get a certain groups of them. A lot of them traditionally have headed off to law school. Still have a lot of students headed to law and policy programs. A lot of people like to go down to work in DC, go to the Hill. Like right now, I have a bunch of kids that graduated last year that are working in Congress with research groups, organizations, federal government. There seems to be some excitement again about being engaged in those types of things. Washington's such a a young city, so it's not surprising that a lot of young
Great
folks.
spot to meet singles, right?
Yeah, they have a good. I just was talking to a few of my students today via email about one just got a job. I recommended him to a polling firm, and he was talking about his experience. He's loving DC, so it's a good place to be for a young person.
Yeah, that's great to see. You want to have faith in the future, and it's good to see that a lot of the young people still want to head towards Washington, still want to be involved in policy and government.
But just a note along with that, Mary, we've seen an increase in interest in political science over the last few years at the college. It ebbs and flows over time, right? There's kind of ups and down periods when students are interested in political matters, and they change over time. But we're on an upswing right now, and American Political Science Association, which tracks these things, has shown that it's broader than Muhlenberg. It seems to be an area where there's increased interest right now on issues. So hopefully that's a sign. I'm optimistic. I always am with working with folks. They're as you can guess, in the middle of a pandemic, like all of us, feeling the wear and tear, right? They're tired. A lot of people are tired. Students have been trying to keep it together and move forward during changing times and protocols and things. So I'd lie to tell you they're at their best right now. They're a little bit worn down, but I think the long-term picture is much more optimistic.
That's great. That warms my heart as someone with a political science major.
Me too.
Always good. So they're good
Yes.
at all times.
Yeah.
Let's see. Barbara W., I see
I
you.
was just going to ask one more question. What percentage of your Muhlenberg College students voted?
Oh, this is, I wish I knew the answer. I think it was somewhere in the 75% range. Barbara, I don't want to go on record with that. That'd be
Okay.
terrible if I'm making up a number. I tend to recall it was somewhere in that range, which for students is phenomenal. A
Yeah,
college
absolutely.
campus and really good. Again, this organization, Berg Votes, the nonpartisan group, really worked hard to make that happen, right? The reaching out and effort to do so. And the college was very proud. They put out a lot of things about their efforts to make that happen. Right. I think Pat has a
Yeah.
question.
I'd just like to go back to the mail-in thing. A lot of people that telephone the League phone, which is in our kitchen, complain about the mailing. And I think last year there was a great deal of trouble with the mail system being, well, sabotaged maybe. And I don't know if people think that that's part of the political system or the inefficiency of the mail system.
Yeah, I mean, it is important, right, to think about the logistics if you're looking at mail voting of how that happens, right? In addition to the counting and the security and all the issues there, which are many and to be discussed and strengthened. But I think one of the big issues the 2020 election was can the underlying system infrastructure handle it, right? And there was legitimate concerns that the efforts and the resources to make that happen weren't necessarily in place, and it cast out, right? I'm sure you had friends or acquaintances that might have said, well, I don't know if it's going to get there, so I'm going on election day to vote because I want to make sure it gets counted, and I don't want to get it stuck in the mail or have it disqualified, right? So that's part. I mean, it's a really nuanced. I think this year we'll ask many more specific questions about this, about some of the details and moving forward, since it seems to be such a big issue looking forward. But you're absolutely right, Pat. You have to have the infrastructure in place.
That was a problem for older people who at the last minute who physically could not get to their polling place. And also I had one person who called just this year, and there was a real feeling that the mail system for well-to-do neighborhoods was a lot better than it was, say, for downtown Allentown, in little streets where she did not get, her magazines or anything that she wanted to get, that she depended on.
Yeah, and there's lots of research on that and making sure that how consistent it is and equity across and resources and those are all big questions, really great questions to look at as among the many things you folks are involved in and get to think about. So
Yeah, if I could just jump in here for a minute, just to let our members know that I did take all of the complaints that we received from voters from the county and compose about a 3-page letter, point by point, what kind of things we were concerned about as a league, and sent that to the commissioners as well as to the election board. So they have some things to look over, and we did offer anything we could do to help get the message out or whatever. So we were pretty on top of some of the things that were happening in our area, and hopefully we'll get some good responses by the next election. Didn't mean to interrupt, I just want to let our members know we're on top of that one.
That's great to hear, Mary, and probably a good place for me to wrap up and say thank you for having me back and for allowing me to introduce our new results. You'll see them out over the next few days in detail, the full report, all the crosstabs, lots of more data than you'd ever want. But I thank you not only for allowing me to come and share, but as always for your work, which is pivotal in American democracy right now. You should not doubt for a second how central your engagement is in this broader exercise of democracy. And so I encourage you and to keep your energy up, your eyes open, your work moving forward. It's so essential right now. So once again, thank you for that and for having me back again.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm glad you said what you said. I think we need a little bit of a boost. I don't think any of us expected the league to be as busy as we are with a lot of the things that we're involved in nowadays. We're reaching out, we're stretching out. We have 2 people involved on statewide committees, Rochelle and Molly Faust. We're out there and we're going to work and we're going to try really hard. So it was really nice to hear that. That kind of gives us a little boost of energy, and you know, we'll try our best. But I want to thank you. That was very, very interesting. It was very interesting to see the changes. Some were great, some were not so great as far as percentage wise. But again, yeah, we really are in this very partisan world, and it's something we have to deal with and know that it's out there and deal with accordingly. And that's not easy, really not easy. But we appreciate your honesty and your research and your numbers and the fact that we were able to see this before anyone else. And again, appreciate you spending the time. We know you're busy. I don't know if you're completely virtual right now at Muhlenberg or.
No, we're headed back in kind of regular mode, at least right now for this semester. It's still on break though. We're break for a week, so.
Great. Well, I wish you a lot of luck. I hope everybody stays healthy at the college and you're able to stay non-virtual. But I know it's a tough time. It's a tough time. And I think students are tired, and I think so are the teachers. You know, I'm glad I'm not teaching right now, although I do miss it. So before we end, and again, I want to thank you, Chris, and I'm sure next year when you come back, you're going to have a lot more stuff to tell us. I'm sure you have other projects you're thinking about as far as public opinion research. And there's a lot to research out there. There really is. And we wish you the best of luck in the following year.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thanks, everybody. Best of luck to you.
Thank
I'll be
you.
happy to chat again.
Thank you.
Everybody stay well. Stay well.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye, Chris.
Bye.
Before we end, do any of the chairs of any the committees want to give us any updated information?
Nothing's going on.
I was just going to ask Terry for the board meeting on Thursday. I'll send you the second quarter report. Could you put that up on the screen? Be
Sure.
easier for people to see it as we go through it. Thank you.
And I just wanted to announce that I've added to the website the capability to subscribe to our events calendar. So your digital events calendar or your digital calendar on your computer will automatically get our events and updates to our events.
I did it. It works.
Good. And I'm really glad to see some faces we haven't seen for a while. That means we're starting to conquer the ability to use Zoom, and that makes us really happy. We don't want to leave anybody behind. If you know of a member who struggles a little bit with Zoom, maybe you can help them so that they'll be on. I'm thinking maybe the next Hot Topic Luncheon may be virtual again, unless we have a miraculous drop in our COVID numbers. But our infection rate is still really high. So as much as we can follow the science, we'll make decisions on a monthly basis. But if you do know any members who may struggle and not know how to do Zoom, give them a call, show them how to do it. That, I just really bothers me that maybe some of our members are not participating because they don't know how, or maybe their computer doesn't have a camera, which you can still, attend a meeting. You just wouldn't, we wouldn't see your lovely face.
Mary,
Yes.
I have
Hi,
a
Gail.
question. I was having a struggle getting on, and I get on Zoom for my church, but I was having quite a bit of a struggle getting on today for the league. And I'm wondering, do you keep the same number every week? I mean, not every week, I mean, every time that you do the Zoom.
Oh, I'll let
The
Terry
same
answer
number, or
that.
does that number change?
That number changes, Gail, and perhaps the reason you were having a problem is we're requiring people register.
Yeah,
In church, you probably don't have to do that. So ours is a two-step process. You register and then you'll get another email with the link for the Zoom.
do you register every time?
Yes.
You have to register again?
It's
We
a
do.
safety thing. I got scammed on a thing with the art museum where they didn't require registration. It was really horrible.
Oh.
So registration is really important.
But one thing we
Yeah,
might,
somebody their name to
Look.
match mine and started putting all kinds of obscenities. It was horrible.
Ooh.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, one
Yeah.
thing we might look into, which is something that I just did the other day, I just signed up for the next 4 government policy reviews with the State League, and you were able to highlight the next 4 months so that you
Oh.
automatically you will get
Yeah.
the Zoom information in your mail. So I don't know
Yeah.
if we can do that, but, and we don't know how many we're going to be doing virtually. So it might be something to look at the next time we have a series of virtual.
Yeah.
That's
And the other,
strange.
another security thing, and I don't know if you do it, is not allowing people to change their names. There's a security setting so that only the host can change somebody's name, because that also was part of what happened to me.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Yeah, because you can
Okay.
change your name by going up to the corner and hitting those 3 dots,
Right.
oh, yes.
and
Yeah.
and you can rename yourself. So it's
Right.
really, you really should have that setting on the whoever's
Right.
hosting the meeting block. Anyway, just some security things because it was really
Right.
bad experience.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. I don't think in the year
Yeah.
that we've been doing this, we've had one security issue.
No,
So whatever Terry's doing, she's keeping us pretty secure.
yeah.
Okay, well, if there is any other comments or questions, Molly.
I wanted to, Mary, this is Molly. I wanted to ask Cheryl Winters Tetro, does she need more people for the government directory to call and check on information? I guess Cheryl's not on.
Yeah, she is.
Oh. Okay.
Can't hear you, Cheryl.
I'm not muted.
I know, you're pretty low.
Oh, the volume all the way up. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah. Wait, is this better?
much
Yep.
better.
Okay, good. There's 51 contacts and I have, I think, 4 people who volunteered so far. So I'm going to be making up those lists that week and then we'll see if anybody feels it's too much. I'll reach out to you, but I think right now I'm
Okay.
in good shape.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess we're just waiting on the timing of the primary at this point.
Yeah, we have no idea whether that date's going to be moved ahead
Yeah,
because of the lawsuits with the new districts. Who knows?
but we'll contact the people that we know and get all the information updated that we can, and we may just have to sit on it for a while. I don't know.
Okay. I know the governor has been given till January 30th to approve the congressional map. Even though the State Department wants all maps done by January 24th, they're giving the governor till the 30th in one of the lawsuits. So I don't know what that means as far as the big
Okay.
concern is for the state offices that they have to start their petition process. And if they can't start their petition process, knowing what the district is
what
that
the
they're
district
representing,
Yeah,
then for sure the primary date will most likely be pushed ahead, which is not a big issue. They did it for COVID the last time into, I think, the first week of June. So
mhm,
it's just a wait and see. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
But thank you
Okay,
for
anyone
asking.
else?
Okay.
Okay, well, if no one else has any comments or questions, I want to thank so many people for attending and listening to Chris. He's always a delight. He always has a lot of good information for us. And next month, I had told you that it'll be a discussion on the opioid crisis in the Lehigh Valley. And I think you'll find out a lot of interesting information, good, bad, and indifferent. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Everybody have a great month. Please stay healthy, wear your mask, be careful where you go. This is very catchy, and we'll see you all next month.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Terry.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.